All right.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a community meeting for SP2022-04, the Scottsville Substation Expansion Project. I'm Scott Clark. I'm with the County Community Development Department. And the purpose of tonight's meeting, as you'll see, is to get everyone a chance to hear some information about the special use permit request. I will start by doing a very brief presentation about the county processes, and then I will hand it off to Roya Smith, who will be doing the presentation for the applicants to describe the project. And after that, we'll have a Q&A session in which we can answer questions about the project or about the county review process from anybody who's interested. So let me get started here. Alrighty. So again, this is a community meeting. Purpose is to share information about the proposed project and the development review process, and also to get input from members of the public who are interested and answer any questions you might have. So to start off with the county process, to explain the foundations of what we do, we start with the comprehensive plan. This is a document that establishes a 20-year vision for the county in terms of land use. And it's a policy document that guides all of our land use decision making, and is developed out of extensive public input work with the whole community. The project we're talking about tonight is located in the rural area of the county. And you can see here there are several objectives under the overarching goal for protecting farms and forests, traditional crossroads communities, scenic areas, historic sites, and preserved natural resources. These are the guiding policies for land use in the rural areas and for any development review in that area. It's also is implemented through zoning. Like most places, Albemarle has a zoning ordinance that defines what can be built and where. What you can do on the land depends on what zone you're in. As you can see here, there are a lot of different colored zoning districts that might be commercial or institutional or residential on the map, but the majority of the county, about 95%, is zoned rural areas or RA. And the project we're talking about tonight is permitted in that district, but by special use permit. What that means is some uses, such as doing farming and forestry or having a residence, are by right. You can just do those activities. Other uses are permitted only by special use permit. That means a detailed application has to be filed, and the Board of Supervisors has the ability to approve or not approve a given use depending on its scale, its impacts, and can apply conditions to that use. So special use permit and rezoning applications are considered legislative reviews. And again, that means that only the Board of Supervisors can approve them. We start the process with a review by staff at the county and other agencies such as VDOT. After all the staff review is done, the application is reviewed by the Planning Commission, whose job is to advise the Board of Supervisors on land use issues, and finally by the board themselves at a public hearing where the use can be approved or denied. Every special use permit, not just substations, but anything that's permitted in any zoning district by special use permit is subject to consistent standards for review and approval. Those four main standards are: one, that there will be not substantial detriment to adjacent properties; second, that the character of the area is not changed; third, that the use is in harmony with the by right uses permitted in the district and with public health and safety; and finally, that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. In other words, that it does not conflict with those goals we talked about earlier, the land use policy for any given area in the county. So step by step, how does that development process happen? It's quite a detailed process. You can see the timeline here on the left. We begin with legislative review for, again, uses that require special use permits or rezonings. Later, there's a site plan review, which is a more technical review of the layout for the site. And then finally, at the end, there are building permits and zoning clearances that have to do with the actual construction. We are about there in the process now, so very early on, just beginning the legislative review and working on staff review to respond to the applicants, and also here tonight to get some input from the public and answer questions. So this application came in on February 21st. Staff will be providing comments to the applicants on April 25th. We have not yet scheduled the Planning Commission or Board of Supervisors public hearings. Typically, that would be done after the staff review is complete and all of the basic questions have been answered. If you live near the site, or if you're just generally interested in the course of this review, or if you want to know about the dates of those public hearings once we set them, again, my name is Scott Clark. My email address is sclark@albemarle.org, and you can contact me at any time to ask any questions that you might have. So at this point, I'm going to hand off to the applicants to give everyone a description of their project. And then after Roya does that presentation, we can have a Q&A session.
All right, thanks Scott for that introduction. I think I should be sharing my screen in just a second, so let me know if you can see that.
Yep, it's up.
Awesome. Well, good evening. Thank you for those who have called in and attended tonight's community meeting. As Scott Clark just mentioned, this is kind of our first step with the special use permit application for Appalachian Power's proposed Scottsville Substation expansion project. My name is Roya Smith. I'm with Power Engineers. I'm the siting specialist for this project. I'll be running through this presentation for tonight's meeting. But first, before we kind of get into those details, and as Scott kind of already kicked us off with the county introduction, I'd like to introduce the AEP project team we have today, followed by just the overall Scottsville Substation expansion project overview, the need for the project, as well as our expansion plans as part of this SUP, followed by the schedule for the project, and then ending with a question and answer session with myself and the other project team members as well. So again, my name is Roya Smith. I'm the siting specialist. On today's meeting, we have Jim Lovell. He is the civil engineer with Earth Environmental and Civil. Mike Lively, he's our station engineer with DeJoya Gray. And then from AEP, we have Emily Larson, the siting manager, Larry Jackson with external affairs, and Courtney Mustard, our project outreach specialist for the project. Again, I'll be running through this presentation and hopefully answer any questions you have at the end during our Q&A period. So just kind of a high level overview of what the Scottsville Substation expansion project involves and what we're proposing in our special use permit application. The project involves first expanding the existing substation at its current property, building a new access entrance, and constructing a detention pond on a property north of the Scottsville substation and also owned by the company, and all of which contributes to part of a larger area improvements project, which is known as the Central Virginia Transmission Reliability Project, which Appalachian Power announced a couple years ago. The importance of this project, it's really going to enhance the system reliability overall by replacing some really old equipment at the Scottsville substation. Most of the equipment there today has reached the end of its useful life. So by upgrading this equipment, it's going to ensure reliable and adequate electric service to the area and to the community. It's also going to help accommodate future growth in the Central Virginia counties, including Albemarle County. So overview of kind of where we're looking at for the Scottsville Substation expansion project. This is an aerial kind of screenshot. So the two properties associated with the project include tax maps 130-41A, which is where the existing Scottsville Substation is located, just on the west side of James River Road and south of Bryant Lane. And then tax map 130-41C1, which is going to accommodate the proposed detention pond, as well as the new access road entrance to that substation. Both of these properties are owned by Appalachian Power. As Scott Clark kind of mentioned earlier with the land use areas as part of the comprehensive plan, these two properties are located in the rural areas land use designation, as is the surrounding area. Southern Albemarle County is pretty much where we're looking at here. And both of the properties for the expansion project total to be about 8 acres. The red boundary that you see on the screen is the project limits. So about 5.2 acres of the proposed project plans are going to take place in this red boundary. And then surrounding the Scottsville substation and the property to the north are largely agricultural areas on the east side of James River Road, and then some residential and largely forested properties surrounding the substation there. So most of this presentation, I'll kind of be walking through this slide here, which is a concept of all the different project features we're proposing in our SUP. So starting with the expansion areas, which are shaded in the black on the left and the right of our current substation boundary. So on the property to the south, we're looking to expand the substation on the current property to the west about 40 feet. This is going to accommodate the new distribution equipment. This includes transformers as well as protection controls. And then on the eastern side over by James River Road, the substation will be expanded in a 45 by 55 foot area. And that's to accommodate a new control house building. And that new control house building will help support those voltage upgrades when we go into construction for the project. There's other equipment inside the substation that'll be installed and replaced based on the age of the equipment. However, the equipment being installed is not going to exceed any of the heights of the existing structures that are currently there. And overall, by expanding the station to the west and the east, we're able to minimize outage durations. So that's largely the need for substation expansion areas that I just reviewed there. This substation today currently sits within a fenced gravel pad, and so will the expansion areas as well. And then the second piece of the project is constructing the detention pond. So given the size constraints of the current substation property, we looked for an alternative solution to construct the detention pond and meet those state stormwater requirements. So on the northern end of that property, north of Bryant Lane, the company plans to construct that detention pond to comply with those standards. And working with the county and looking at ways to avoid impacts to the transmission line right-of-ways, also retaining vegetative buffers. Our proposed location of that pond is going to be closer to Bryant Lane. There's also some wetlands and streams on that north end or northwestern end of that property that we're trying to maintain a vegetative buffer and avoid all possible. So with the proposed pond by the Bryant Lane, we're trying to minimize those overall impacts. And then the access road was another part of this proposed project. So currently the existing entrance off of James River to the substation is just on the south side of Bryant Lane. And currently it doesn't meet site distance requirements, and there's a lot of safety risks with entering and exiting off of James River to that substation. So the alternative solution was looking at modifying the existing entrance and modifying that turning radius off of James River Road. However, the site distance concerns weren't alleviated in that solution. So in working with the county, also with VDOT, we're looking at proposing the access road off of James River to the north and on that same property as the detention pond. In between the road and James River is a tree line that we're looking to retain as part of this project, as to minimize some of those view sheds from the road and using that access road. With the existing access road off James River, I'd also like to mention that it'll be used during the substation expansion portion of the project. However, we do plan to remove it and revegetate it after construction's been complete. And then as part of constructing the new access road off James River, construction's only planned for about a year. So we're working with VDOT to address plans on working along the shoulder of James River during construction. And then once construction's complete, traffic to the substation will truly be limited to future access and maintenance. And going off of, equipment upgrades at the substation, it should require even fewer trips just with the maintenance visits as well. So overall, with the new access road location to the north and upgrading the equipment, trying to minimize disruption to the communities, users of James River Road, and also the residences along Bryant Lane too. And then the last thing on this concept map is our landscaping plans. So the overall goal is to preserve vegetative buffers and protect the natural environment, including those wetlands and streams, as much as possible. So where we have new plantings proposed on the western expansion area, we've got screening trees proposed. We're planning on Holly osmanthus species. Those tend to grow 15 feet high and about 5 to 10 feet wide. And then on the eastern expansion area and the existing access road area, we're planning shrub screening. So those will be likely Carissa hollies that'll grow to about 3 to 4 feet high and 4 to 6 feet wide. Like I mentioned before, the tree line along James River Road between our new proposed road and James River will be retained, as well as the vegetative buffer by those stream and wetlands from the detention pond. About an 82-foot buffer will be maintained, so that way we can protect those natural features. And overall, talking with the county and trying to minimize impacts to the transmission line right-of-ways on the properties, we want to choose plantings that are based on Albemarle's recommended plants list, but also compatible with the other right-of-ways on the property. And then lastly, the lighting. All lighting in the substation will have photoelectric controls. So those will be added to turn the lights on when it's dark and turn them off when it gets light. New LED floodlights will be installed where there's existing high pressure sodium floodlights. Photoelectric controls will be installed. And once the project's constructed, all the lighting will be security lighting. Then this next slide is kind of talking through the schedule. So like Scott Clark kind of mentioned, right now we're in the SUP process in the early phase before we acquire permits and kind of finalize all of those permits with the county. So the property to the north, first we had to purchase the property to the north for the detention pond, as well as where the proposed access is being located. That was back in November of 2020. And then our SUP process ongoing now until we get to the public hearings with the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And also our public outreach efforts have been ongoing as well. So initially when we announced a larger area transmission improvements project a few years ago, we held a virtual open house for this phase of the project and also other line rebuild in the area back in August of 2020. And then tonight, obviously, we've got our virtual community meeting as part of the SUP process with the county, and then followed by county Board of Supervisor and Planning Commission hearings, which, as Scott mentioned, will be determined at a later date. And then the construction for this project, we're anticipating it to begin in spring of 2024 and last about a year. So thank you very much for your time and for listening in on this presentation. I guess I'll hand it over back to Scott to kind of initiate the question answer period of the presentation.
All right, thanks, Roya. If you won't mind, go ahead and unshare your screen there. And
there it is. Okay.
there we go. Thank you. All right. And for anybody who has any questions, either for the applicants or for me about county matters, you should have a raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, and you can click that, and one by one we'll give each of you an opportunity to ask your questions. Carolyn, for those who are calling in, what do they need to hit to raise their hand?
They need to do the *9 button.
Right. Right. Thank you. So yes, if you're calling in from a phone and want to ask a question, if you just press *9 on your phone, that'll give us that raise hand indication so we can give you an opportunity to speak. So again, just go ahead and hit the raise hand button if you have a question, and we'll try to get everybody a chance to ask.
I do not have anybody at this time with their hand raised.
Alrighty, well, we can, oh, no, we do have a hand. There we go. Says Kinsey Giddick. If you want to go ahead and just give us your location and let us know what your question is, we'll try to help.
Hi, we live at 529 James River Road, so just kitty corner to the proposed expansion. And I was wondering if we could just learn a little bit more about some of the traffic and some of the stresses that be upon the road during the building time and after. Just considering school buses and things of that nature. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Kinsey, for that question. So construction's anticipated to start in spring of 2024. It'll last about a year. We are still working with VDOT on those actual traffic control plans and what that traffic study will look like. But we are hoping to plan, addressing working on the shoulder in that time of the year construction. Once construction's complete, though, traffic to the substation should really only be limited to future access and maintenance. And with that upgrade equipment at Scottsville, it should require fewer maintenance visits as well. So overall, the project, we're anticipating to minimize disruption to the traffic flow along James River and should not increase traffic volume. I hope that answered your question, but let me know if there's anything else I can clarify.
All right. Does anybody else have a question? Feel free to tap the raise hand button or *9 on your phone. There we do have somebody. Good.
Scott, this is Supervisor Price. Roya, what kind of response have you received from the surrounding properties, if any? What kind of response, if any, have you received from the surrounding properties? We just heard from one neighbor. Have you received anything in writing from any of the other property owners around there?
Sure. So as of recent, I know we have been contacting adjacent landowners to the Scottsville substation, in addition to the letters that we sent for the SUP and several years ago with the initial announcement of the project. We haven't heard back from any of those landowners, but Courtney, I see she just put on her video. She's AEP's outreach specialist for the project. So I'll let her speak to any of that if there's any more information she can provide.
Thank you.
Yeah, Roy, I think you covered it. When we sent out the letters for this meeting, we've only received a call from one landowner with some questions, and we're working through his questions with him, but that's it.
Kinsey has another question. Kinsey, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Sorry. Being a neighbor to the substation, the present one, we also do notice a decent hum that comes from the equipment there. Could we anticipate a larger noise presence from the expansion? Or is that maybe to what you spoke of, some of the aging equipment? Sorry for chewing up your time.
No, that's a great question. And, part of this project is upgrading that equipment, and a lot of the old transformers at the Scottsville substation, they're models from back in the 1950s. So certainly those noise standard levels have changed since then. So with the new modern design equipment, particularly the transformers, we're anticipating that the noise levels will likely dissipate a lot quicker at a lot shorter of a distance than what you're hearing there today.
Great, thank you. Living nearby, we've always, app power has always been great, and your linemen have always been really helpful in any outages we've had. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing all this information.
I don't have anybody else at this time, Scott.
There we go. All right, we'll just give it one last chance here. Anybody that has a remaining question, please raise your hand. But not seeing any, I'll just say thank you everyone for taking the time to attend. And again, my email address is sclark@albemarle.org. If you have any questions about the process, or if you need to pass on a question about the project that I can help you get answered with the applicants, please let me know. And otherwise, thank you all for taking the time to attend and listen, and we'll talk to you again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Good night.